Well, for the last several days, President Obama and his entire national security team have been reviewing the situation in Syria. And today I want to provide an update on our efforts as we consider our response to the use of chemical weapons. What we saw in Syria last week should shock the conscience of the world. It defies any code of morality. Let me be clear. The indiscriminate slaughter of civilians, the killing of women and children and innocent bystanders by chemical weapons is a moral obscenity. By any standard, it is inexcusable, and despite the excuses and equivocations that some have manufactured, it is undeniable. The meaning of this attack goes beyond the conflict in Syria itself. And that conflict has already brought so much terrible suffering. This is about the large-scale, indiscriminate use of weapons that the civilized world long ago decided must never be used at all, a conviction shared even by countries that agree on little else. There is a clear reason that the world has banned entirely the use of chemical weapons. There is a reason the international community has set a clear standard and why many countries have taken major steps to eradicate these weapons. There is a reason why President Obama has made it such a priority to stop the proliferation of these weapons and lock them down where they do exist. There is a reason why President Obama has made clear to the Assad regime that this international norm cannot be violated without consequences. And there is a reason why, no matter what you believe about Syria, all peoples and all nations who believe in the cause of our common humanity must stand up to assure that there is accountability for the use of chemical weapons so that it never happens again. Last night, after speaking with foreign ministers from around the world about the gravity of this situation, I went back and I watched the videos that anybody can watch in the social media, and I watched them one more gut-wrenching time. It is really hard to express in words the human suffering that they lay out before us. As a father, I can't get the image out of my head of a man who held up his dead child, wailing while chaos swirled around him. The images of entire families dead in their beds without a drop of blood or even a visible wound. Bodies contorting in spasms, human suffering that we can never ignore or forget. Anyone who could claim that an attack of this staggering scale could be contrived or fabricated needs to check their conscience and their own moral compass. What is before us today is real, and it is compelling. So I also want to underscore that while investigators are gathering additional evidence on the ground, our understanding of what has already happened in Syria is grounded in facts, informed by conscience, and guided by common sense. The reported number of victims, the reported symptoms of those who were killed or injured, the first-hand accounts from humanitarian organizations on the ground, like Doctors Without Borders and the Syria Human Rights Commission. These all strongly indicate that everything these images are already screaming at us is real, that chemical weapons were used in Syria. Moreover, we know that the Syrian regime maintains custody of these chemical weapons. We know that the Syrian regime has the capacity to do this with rockets. We know that the regime has been determined to clear the opposition from those very places where the attacks took place. And with our own eyes, we have all of us become witnesses. We have additional information about this attack, and that information is being compiled and reviewed together with our partners, and we will provide that information in the days ahead. Our sense of basic humanity is offended not only by this cowardly crime, but also by the cynical attempt to cover it up. At every turn, the Syrian regime has failed to cooperate with the UN investigation, using it only to stall and to stymie the important effort to bring to light what happened in Damascus in the dead of night. And as Ban Ki-moon said last week, the UN investigation will not determine who used these chemical weapons, only whether such weapons were used, a judgment that is already clear to the world. I spoke on Thursday with Syrian Foreign Minister Mouallem, and I made it very clear to him that if the regime, as he argued, had nothing to hide, then their response should be immediate transparency, immediate access, not shelling. Their response needed to be unrestricted and immediate access. Failure to permit that, I told him, would tell its own story. Instead, for 5 days, the Syrian regime refused to allow the UN investigators access to the site of the attack that would allegedly exonerate them. Instead, it attacked the area further, shelling it and systematically destroying evidence. That is not the behavior of a government that has nothing to hide. That is not the action of a regime eager to prove to the world that it had not used chemical weapons. In fact, the regime's belated decision to allow access is too late, and it's too late to be credible. Today's reports of an attack on the UN investigators, together with the continued shelling of these very neighborhoods, only further weakens the regime's credibility. At President Obama's direction, I've spent many hours over the last few days on the phone with foreign ministers and other leaders. The administration is actively consulting with members of Congress, and we will continue to have these conversations in the days ahead. President Obama has also been in close touch with leaders of our key allies, and the President will be making an informed decision about how to respond to this indiscriminate use of chemical weapons. But make no mistake, President Obama believes there must be accountability for those who would use the world's most heinous weapons against the world's most vulnerable people. Nothing today is more serious, and nothing is receiving more serious scrutiny.
This is Dabu 7, and we have huge news here at this moment as the UN has come out and stated that it was the rebels that used the nerve gas, not Assad's army. This should put a halt to the war, but it's not. This should be breaking everywhere on mainstream media. It's not. The UN officials have stated they have the evidence to prove it was the rebels, the same rebels that Obama and company are backing. With that said, we just had a huge explosion strike in Damascus, close to the presidential palace, and they are ready in position for a barrage of more than 100 missiles within a 48-hour blitz that is going to take place here. Now, Syria has came out and stated that if Damascus is attacked, Tel Aviv will burn. Israel is aware of this, and for those of you that don't know, Assad has escaped. He's made it into Iran, so he is not in Syria. So even if they bomb these palaces, he's not there. A bunch of other Syrian elite have joined him and have fled. They're out of there. So what you have here is confirmed that it was the rebels that are backed by Obama and company that killed these people in this attack. They're using this live an excuse to go in and drop more bombs, and as the Syrian officials have just stated, there's not much left of Damascus. It's rubble. So whatever's left, they expect them to bomb, and it's not going to stop a thing. Besides kill innocent lives, which is what these rebels have done at this point, and it's sick. Now, if this information was out there for the world to see right now, this is the truth. This is what should be on the mainstream, and it's not. They tend to like to strike here around sunrise, which will be about a half an hour out from here, about 10 p.m. Eastern Time tonight. Before daybreak, or right at daybreak, right around this time is when they like to strike. So I'll leave links as always, but as of right now, this should be the red alert news everywhere. UN officials have the proof that this was the act of the rebels, not Assad's army. I'll leave links as always. This has been Dabu 7. Eyes open.
And I am very proud to announce my choice for America's next Secretary of State, John Kerry.
You both were members of Skull and Bones, a secret society at Yale. What does that tell us? Not much, because it's a secret. Is there a secret handshake? Is there a secret code? I wish there were something secret I could manifest. 322, secret number? There are all kinds of secrets, all kinds of secrets.
In an extraordinarily distinguished Senate career and as chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, John's played a central role in every major foreign policy debate for nearly 30 years.
It is something that we know. For instance, Saddam Hussein has used weapons of mass destruction against his own people. And there is some evidence of their efforts to try to secure these kinds of weapons and even test them.
I think we need to put the pressure on, no matter what the evidence is about September 11th.
I think we clearly have to keep the pressure on terrorism globally. This doesn't end with Afghanistan by any imagination, and I think the president's made that clear. I think we've made that clear.
As John has said, we are an exceptional nation, not because we say we are, but because we do exceptional things.
We ought to put the heat on Saddam Hussein. I've said that for a number of years, Bill. I criticized the Clinton administration for backing off of the inspections.
I think it's fair to say that there are going to be some great challenges ahead. An uncertain world will continue to test our nation. But even with all the challenges that we face, I have never been more confident, more optimistic, that if we act with wisdom and with purpose, we're guided by our values, and we remind what binds us together as Americans, the United States will continue to lead in this world for our lifetimes.
When I vote to give the President of the United States the authority to use force if necessary to disarm Saddam Hussein, because I believe that a deadly arsenal of weapons of mass destruction in his hands is a threat, and a grave threat to our security and that of our allies in the Persian Gulf region, I will vote because I believe it is the best way to hold Saddam Hussein accountable. And the administration, I believe, now is committed to a recognition that war must be the last option to address this threat, not the first, and that we must act in concert with allies around the globe to make the world's case against Saddam Hussein. As the President made clear earlier this week, quote, approving this resolution does not mean that military action is imminent or unavoidable. It means that America speaks with one voice. So let me be clear. The vote that I will give to the President is for one reason and one reason only: to disarm Iraq of weapons of mass destruction. If we cannot accomplish that objective through new tough weapons inspection in joint concert with our allies. In giving the President this authority, I expect him to fulfill the commitments he has made to the American people in recent days, to work with the United Nations Security Council, to adopt a new resolution setting out tough, immediate inspection requirements, and to act with our allies at our side if we have to disarm Saddam Hussein by force.
So, John, I'm very grateful that you've agreed to take on this new assignment. I'm confident that the Senate will confirm you quickly. I guess you won't be able to actually appear and preside at the same time, so we'll have to figure out how that works. But I know that you're going to be an outstanding Secretary of State.